Hi friends, I'm Ashley. Welcome to Darling Cottage Diary. Today we're making a tag journal that is in the theme of the French fairy tale La Chatte Blanche, or in English that would be White Cat. It's kind of a gender reversed Beauty and the Beast, if you like that story, which is so fitting because my Ephemera Society chose Beauty and the Beast, like the original French Beauty and the Beast story, to be our theme for last month, and this month for April they chose White Cat, and so I'm very excited. I'm very in a fairy tale mood right now, and I'm very inspired by the whole rereading them and researching them and coming up with designs that match the aesthetic and the vibe and the story details. Y'all know me, I love a good story. And so I wanted to make a tag journal. I've wanted to make a tag journal for a while, but I wanted it to be themed because I know tag journals are so versatile. They're not constrained to a normal diary shape, and so we can add all kinds of things to them, and then as long as we can punch a hole in it and put it on our ring or our string we're keeping it on, then we can do anything to it, and the world is our oyster when it comes to creating these. But I wanted to offer, this is the printable that Ephemera Society gets, and you can find that on my patreon.com/darlingcottagediary. And I wanted the tags to be, color-wise, have kind of a color theme running through it, and have hints to the story, but I didn't want it to be so overt that you couldn't use these as backgrounds for your personal life and personal journaling, or if you have another fairy tale you had in mind, if you wanted to do like a historical one, if you're reading a cool biography and you wanted to like write down some of your favorite quotes from a book, or like modern fantasy, whatever. I wanted it to be versatile for whatever you wanted to use for the tags. So I printed that on the front of this page, and then on the back I printed a letter form that I created that's also in the downloadable library, the printable library on my Patreon. And so just so it has a nice like neutral background, but it's not stark white, it has some color and texture to it. And so that worked out because it's kind of a visual story on one side of the tags, and then the back of the tags ended up having a lot of quotes and stuff. So it worked out in a storytelling type of way. So, and then for Ephemera Society, what they're getting in the mail this month, every piece of this has something to do with the White Cat story, but again, I was trying to keep it neutral enough to where you could use it in other spreads and pages. And so we have this pretty piece of upcycled pink linen that I found. This is some marbled handmade paper that I found at a local art supply. This is a needle, which we'll get to all of these pieces of this story later in the video. This is a carrosse, a big carriage from the late 1600s, early 1700s. These are all different timepieces, like small timepieces that I superimposed on a pretty background, a pretty salon where people would gather and sit. And then this is a sticker sheet of like rub-on stickers. I've been really liking the rub-on stickers lately because my Cricut has been on the fritz, and I just don't want to deal with it right now. I have a very complicated relationship with my Cricut. And then that tower is from this postcard that I found. The postcard, which is marked from 1902. I found the postcard in a antique store, but I've actually been inside this tower. This is Le Tour de Rouen, which is where Joan of Arc was held prisoner for a long time before she was tried and executed. And so White Cat, there's a part of it that is she's kept in a tower. It's like you have this very sparkly, happy, pretty fairy tale, and then right in the middle you learn about her origin story, and it's sinister and dark. And so I love fairy tales that have that balance of, we can go through really difficult trials in our lives, and that doesn't doesn't make our positive experience worse. In some ways it makes them better, because then we can appreciate them, and having that contrast is really important for positive emotions. We feel them more strongly because we have been through the depths of the negative emotions. And so I just love this story. It's beautiful. So these first tags we're starting with, the whole story begins with this king who has 3 sons, and everybody wants the king to retire. And the king's like, we're going to send the sons on a quest to figure out who's the most worthy, because I don't want to, do the traditional thing and just give it to the eldest son. And so he says, go find me the most adorable tiny dog you can find in all the lands, and I need a companion to retire to the country. And so they all leave, kind of dress as regular people to blend in, because they don't want to deal with the pomp of, they're on a quest, they're on a mission. They're not trying to tour the countryside as, these wealthy princes. And so one of the princes comes across a castle in the middle of the night. The walls the descriptions of this story are so good. I found a really good English translation of all of her fairy tales, including White Cat, and I'll put that book in the description box below. But so he comes to this castle where the walls are porcelain, and they're like, you can see the light shining through them, and the door knocker that's connected to the bell is just a string of diamonds, and it's just very, very beautiful. And he's brought through 60 different rooms by these bodiless hands that are serving him and bringing him food and dressing him and fixing his hair and tending to his horse and all of this stuff. And so that first one, I wanted it to show the hands, giving him all these lavish desserts. So that's the beginning of our story. And we have the candlelight and the fleur de lis to talk about the prince himself of, he's going through this candlelit castle as royalty, and he's trying to figure out what's going on. So then we have White Cat. He's sat down to eat, and this beautiful cat who, she's like wearing a mourning veil, and we don't know why, but she's very graceful, and she speaks, and she's intelligent, and the prince is just completely captivated by this adorable little cat who can talk. And she loves talking about philosophy and the world and the just magic and all of these wonderful things, and they have a beautiful conversation. They have beautiful times together. The cats, come in, they're gifted musicians and poets, and and he has a grand time. And at one point they go on a hunt, and he goes with them, and she makes a wooden horse for him to ride, that's very fast and can keep up, and she rides a monkey, and her other cats ride all different other kinds of animals, but no real horses, because cats and real horses don't get along in real life, if you know anything about them. And so she's like, and he makes a comment that she's ditched her mourning veil and she's wearing a dragoon's hat to go hunting, and they're all very nimble, and she chases this, climbs her way up into an eagle's nest and devours all of the eggs, and it's just the most grand of hunts. And so I wanted the second tag to show this scene. And so the quote on the front said, "There had never been a pleasanter hunt." And then on the back, I had designed this out of some 16th century, I guess that's 17th, 18th, late 17th, early 18th. I tried to keep all of the aesthetic within that time period, but you know how dress and fashion change. But so she's got her little dragoon hat and her outfit, and I added a white cat face and replaced it from the woman who was in that original photo, or the original drawing. And I wanted it to have a sense of them being in the forest without it being like obvious trees. So I thought these pretty leafy, lacy cutouts, and these, it almost reminds me of like vines or seaweed. I love this little, I think it's probably little plastic polyester pieces, but the little, I wanted the green hint because she's climbing up into the trees that are covered in vines to get her eagle's eggs. And so that was the idea for this part. Now, as the story moves on, our beautiful white cat dazzles the prince with all of her generosity and her magical castle, and he's so curious about what is happening and who she is and why she can talk and why she he's so confused, but he's so enchanted by everything that he'll ask her a little bit about it, but then he doesn't want to, she kind of coyly puts down his questions and brings out some other thing to impress him by, and and he lets it drop because he doesn't want to insult his host. And a year finally passes, because that's how long the king tells them to be gone, is go for a year, and whoever finds the most adorable dog, that's the one who gets the crown. So she knows of his quest. Then their first dinner night together, he tells her why he's out wandering the countryside and how he found her castle. And she said, the day comes, and he had scarcely remembered it because he's having such a good time, and enjoying her company so much. And so the day comes, and she fixes his wooden horse up, and she's like, okay, this horse can travel like 10,000 leagues in a day, so you'll get to your dad really fast. Take this acorn and open it when you get to your dad's. And he's like, I don't understand. She said, well, bring it to your ear and you'll hear it bark. And he does, and he hears a tiny little bark, and so he trusts her that there's the most perfect dog, tiniest, most perfect dog in this little acorn. And so he rides his horse, and his other brothers found adorable dogs, and then it's his turn to show his, and everybody's laughing because he presents the acorn, and he takes the cap off, and the most adorable little dog jumps out. And so, those of you who've been on my channel, y'all know how I feel about like my walnuts that I fill with little treasures. And I was squeeing reading this story. And so the king realizes, oh, well, clearly this is the best one. I need to, give him my crown, but I'm still not ready to retire. I still don't want to do it. I'm a good king after all. I need to stay in my place. And so then he says, it's unfair for me to, he comes up with excuses. And he says, okay, one more quest. You need to find the finest piece of linen, because in his mind, he's like, this needs to be an impossible quest. You need to find a piece of linen so finely made that it passes through the eye of a needle. And so they set off on a year-long quest again. He goes right back to White Cat. He's like, I don't care. I'm going back to my lady. And so the horse takes him back, and he finds her like a little disheveled and despondent and kind of sad, lying on her bed. And she was like, oh, I'm so happy you came back. She kind of had some doubts that he would. And you have this sense from the beginning that she knows who he is, or that she's very at ease with him. And there's a sense that she knows, she's known him before, and she wears a little picture, like a painted picture of a man who looks just like him, but he doesn't ask her about it because, again, he doesn't want to be rude. And she's in mourning, and so he's still confused about everything, but he's just going along with it because he likes spending time with her. And anyway, so she's so happy he comes back and perks herself up and gets herself all primed and proper, and they have another wonderful year together. And then the day comes and he fully forgets what day he's supposed to go back and kind of doesn't want to. But it comes down to it, and she's like, no, you need to go get your kingdom. You are a good person, you're a good man, you need to rule your kingdom. Take this walnut. And he goes back on his wooden horse and presents the walnut to his father. After his brothers, they both bring back wonderful pieces of linen that can pass through a tapestry needle, but can't get through the finest embroiderer's needle. And so he gives the walnut, he opens it up, and inside there's a cherry pit. And he's starting to get a little nervous, and he cracks the cherry pit open, and inside, and there's just like a kernel of corn, and it goes all the way down, and he really starts getting nervous because he's like, oh, why? And he thinks this, and he's like, oh, White Cat, you're playing with me, you're making fun of me now. I'm having these doubts, and he feels her scratch his hand, and to the point where his hand bleeds, and she's like, boy, don't question that I would do you wrong, keep going. He's like, and he even says, I don't know. He just feels the scratch and his hand starts bleeding, but he doesn't know what it means. And he's like, whether this is encouragement or a further insult, I don't know, but I'm gonna trust her. And so there are several times in the story where she's so gracious and, loving and very confident, like a real cat, but she also is, she'll have some real sharp remarks, or there's a ferocity to her that comes out every once in a while, and I really like that because it's very similar to like a rose. You have a beautiful rose, but you have to be careful or it's gonna scratch you with her thorns, and it's very, I like all of these kind of symbols of traditional femininity, of being this very demure sort of graceful being that can turn on you and hurt you really fast if you hurt her, or I like that dynamic. And so he trusts her, and he opens the millet seed, which is the tiniest one, and out comes this very long piece of very, very, very fine linen that is covered in all sorts of beautiful paintings, like a tapestry almost. And it passes through the embroidery needle 6 times. So the king, realizing that he's been defeated, that he is going to need to pass, he can't keep up the facade that he wants to keep his crown anymore, he's going to have to pass it to his youngest son. And his final quest is, okay, I won't delay this anymore, but I can't hand my crown to anybody who is not already married because we need to preserve our legacy and our family heritage. So go find you the most beautiful woman who makes you happy to be your queen, and bring her back here, and I'll make my decision then. So the prince runs right back to White Cat, as we know he will, and she already knew he was going to come back. She's not sad on her little pellet anymore. And she's quite coy when he comes back and says, well, king's son, you have again returned without a crown. And he says, madam, your kindness has certainly given me the best chance of gaining it, but I am convinced that the king would have no more trouble in giving it away than I should have pleasure in possessing it. No matter, she said, you must neglect nothing that can make you deserve it. I will help you this time, and since you must take a beautiful girl to your father's court, I will find you one with will cause you to win the prize. Who will cause you to win the prize? Now, let us amuse ourselves. I have ordered a naval combat between my cats and the terrible rats of the country. And so they go on to have this really fun scene that I'm going to go back and add more tags with different scenes, because so many are so fun, and just it's a very visually pleasing story. And but so they have another wonderful year together. Nothing passes more swiftly than days spent without trouble or care, and if the cat had not been wise enough to remember the time for returning to the court, it is certain that the prince would have entirely forgotten it. She told him the evening before that it only rested with him to take to his father one of the most beautiful princesses the world had ever seen, that the time for destroying the fatal work of the fairies had at length arrived, and to do that it was necessary for him to cut off her head and tail and throw them at once into the fire. So this brings us to, she's hinted a little bit at she was cursed to be this way. She was cursed to be a cat. And he's completely taken aback by this because this has come out of nowhere. And she's like asking him to do this, and he objects and objects and objects because he loves her. It's such a meeting of minds, very, very similar to what we see with Beauty and the Beast, of they fall in love in conversation, even though that physical attraction is taken out of the equation. And a lot of Enlightenment type of time period fairy tales were this way, in Renaissance period, when you had this explosion of art and science and philosophy and things. People were very, very taken with, it was important in a relationship to have an emotional and mental connection. And the physical was something separate from that, which, modern people might argue it's a trifecta of sorts. There is a physical element there, but at the time period, this was a very romantic idea of only loving somebody for their mind. And so he says, White Cat, my love, I would never hurt you. Do you think that I would do something so cruel to you? And it takes some convincing, but she finally says, just do what I wish. We shall both begin to be happy, and you will know on the faith of a rich and honorable cat that I am indeed your friend. And so she's trying to say, you've trusted me to send these things with you to your dad. And you've seen these magical things. I've done these magical things for you before. Please do what I ask. Like, she's been trying to build trust in him that he's not actually going to hurt her. And so he can barely raise his sword. His hands are trembling. He does not want to, cut off her head. And so he does not want to hurt her. But she is asking him to trust her. And so he does it. And before the sword even barely makes contact with her, she suddenly transforms into a beautiful princess. And he's astonished and very happy that he did trust her and everything turned out all right. And he's so dazzled by it all, he thinks he's suddenly enchanted under a spell, or like he fainted or something. But then in come all of these lords and ladies, and all of the bodiless hands suddenly turn into human servants, and all of these people. All the cats are gone, all the invisible bodies are gone. It's just normal people now, and this spell has been broken. And she says, do not imagine, sir, that I have always been a cat. My father once ruled over 6 kingdoms, and he loved my mother dearly. And she launches into this sub-story of her origin, of how she became a cat. And it's very similar to Rapunzel, actually. These dark fairies kind of enchanted her mother to really, really, really want the fruit that was in their garden. And she signed her daughter away to them because with whom she was pregnant at the time, because she just really, really needed to eat this fruit. And she got sick and started dying because she couldn't think of anything else. She couldn't eat anything else. And so they tricked her into this. And the king and queen tried to keep the baby, but lost her anyway, because they sent a dragon and started killing everybody in the kingdoms. And so they finally bowed to the fairies, gave her away, and you'll have to forgive my on-the-nose tag here of, like, we have the key to her turning back into a human was the sword. I just couldn't help myself. It was right there. But anyway, so we learn that, she's been raised in this tower with no doors. It's just a tower, and they fly in on their dragon to bring her things. And again, like with Rapunzel, she's kind of grown in this naive state with very limited access to anybody except for these fairy sisters and other creatures that are kind of in their realm. And she's not wanting for anything physically, but they are kind of mean to her. And so anyway, a knight finds her, hears her, and tries to get in to talk to her and rescue her. And they end up falling in love. And all of that's very similar. He does make it up into the tower, and her talking parrot, pet talking parrot, marries them. So they're married for a few weeks before, and they spend time together whenever the fairies aren't there. He's able to climb up and see her. But once they find out, they bring a suitor of one of their race, and she hates him. He's ugly and mean and has no manners or graces about him, and she just does not like him. And she said, you know, I'm already married anyway. You can't force me into this. I hate you. And they send the dragon in the next time her knightly husband is in there, and the dragon eats him. And then she tries to throw herself into the dragon's mouth because she doesn't want to be a prisoner anymore, and the love of her life just got eaten. And so, but the fairies grab her at the last second, pull her out of the dragon's mouth, and say, you ungrateful brat, you know, you don't get to die that fast. You're going to suffer. And then they turn her and all of her parents' kingdom's subjects into cats. And that's where she's been living. Her parents had already passed. And so she was ruling over all of these kingdoms of cats in a bubble of time and space for however long, until a man who looks just like the man who she was married to before and who had thrown him, you know, who had gotten eaten, comes and spends time with the little white cat and is a prince himself and is trying to find the crown. And so she has this, we find out this is why she kind of has this coyness to her of, like, she's already met him before, is because it seems like maybe she has, whether it's a type of reincarnation or just a, you know, a coincidental thing that confirmed that, well, she was going to sort of kind of get her just desserts. It happens. And so now she knew the whole time that this was probably going to be the man who set her free. And so you have this parallel story of, you know, these really terrible things that happened to her in her youth, and then she had a period of time in her adulthood where she was able to develop herself and develop her mind and spend time with her subjects and rule and everything, and then she got a second chance at love. And I love that. I love that extra dimension to it. And so now that she's a human again, and he gets to take her back to meet his father, she puts herself in this crystal bubble and rides with just the grandest of parties, you know, just thousands and thousands of horses and carriages and all of the flash and pomp of somebody who owns 6 kingdoms or is ruling 6 kingdoms. And but she stays kind of concealed in this crystal bubble inside the grandest of the carriages. And so he presents presents to his father after his older brothers present their wives, and he says, I did not find a beautiful girl, but I did find the most lovely, gracious white cat. And I brought her back for you to meet. And they all start making fun of him. And then as the king, and he's like, no, and he begs the king to come and look in on the crystal to see his white cat friend. And as the king approaches, White Cat stands up and like shatters the crystal bubble, and glitter rains down in all her grandest entrance glory. And she's adorning a flower crown and a beautiful flowing gown and tresses and everything else. And then obviously he realizes that this woman is the one who's been helping his son win all of the contests and the quests. And clearly that, you know, he's happy and they're meant to be together. He can't put off retirement anymore. And White Cat is like, oh, no, sir, you should stay in your position that you're so clearly meant for. I have 6 kingdoms, actually, and my only wish is that we become, you know, affectionate friends, and that you give permission for me to marry your son. And as a token of my affection, of our new alliance and friendship, I will gift you and your other sons a kingdom each to continue to rule on their own, so that there's no reason for war between us. and then we'll have plenty. We'll have 3 kingdoms to rule ourselves. And this idea of like, she is being very generous, but in a way she's also kind of showing the king up, because he's being quite miserly about his kingdom and his power and his wealth, and she wants to show that she is not that way. And she's kind of put him in a place of like, you can't try to go to war with me because I've shown up for you in this way, and I clearly love your son. And like, in this, can you imagine in the time period when this came out? I can imagine how it would have been received, because I imagine it wasn't a normal thing for a lady to request permission for, you know, to marry a man in that realm of, you know, the type of aristocratic upbringing she had, and perhaps was influenced quite a lot by her own life and her own tragedies and adventures that she went through in her life as the author. But anyway, so I love this story. I encourage you to read her fairy tales. They're all wonderful. I want to keep exploring these kind of these lesser known fairy tales that maybe we don't know in the English speaking world or that hasn't been popularized by other people. So yeah, if you liked this, I hope you come back. I post every Sunday, and please leave me in the comments either an emoji for your favorite story, your favorite tag that I made, or just tell me, because I realized like there's 8 or something of them there. So, but yeah, let me know which one you liked and which part of the story you liked best. Give me your thoughts, because I love discussing literature. So I hope to see you again next Sunday. And if you're interested in getting in on any of this ephemera, make sure to check out my Patreon. And I also have a shop, darlingcottagediary.com, where I make handmade journals. I hope to see you next time. Thank you for being here. Bye, friends.